Now we're going to talk about tools, right? So not an exciting topic for me necessarily, but tools of the trade. I think it's important that as a flipper, you have at least the basics.
Sure.
To do the inspecting, the estimating, the project managing. So today we're going to talk about the basics of tools. Tools for inspecting, estimating, and project management. Okay, so we're just going to hop right into tools, and I'm going to tell you what the tool is, and Larry's going to explain it. So large and small flashlights with extra batteries. Seems pretty basic. So tell us, why do we need a large and a small? Extra batteries is obvious. Why do we need a large and a small flashlight?
Well, obviously, it's not rocket science, but it's just one of those things that you want to make sure that you have with you, especially if you're doing a pre-offer inspection.
Okay.
You want to be able to use the little pen light, if you will, to look behind maybe a sink, or maybe under the sink, or behind the washer and dryer, or places where there may be some moisture, or maybe even a little bit of mold or damage or anything like that. So it's nice to have that you can just clip into your pocket or whatever, and you can pull out and use. The larger flashlights would come in if you're the real hands-on type of person, and the homeowner doesn't have a problem with you poking your head up in their attic or in their crawl space or places like that, where you need to be able to see quite a distance in there to make sure that the subsheeting on the roof is not moldy. There's plenty of insulation in the attic, the insulation under the house, crawl space, all the ducts are attached, all those types of things. You want to, if you're that type of person, you want to check all that stuff out, because that'll play into the offer that you make on the house.
Sure, yeah. Well, what a great idea to have that little light, because you do want to check. When you open up a cupboard and you look in, sometimes to see in the back what's going on.
Right.
You don't want to stick your hand in there, or at least I don't.
Well, and let's be honest, in a lot of the older homes, that's where you're going to find leaky pipes and things like that, so you'll be able to see if there's water damage and stuff under
and there might be spiders in there, so I'm gonna peek from a distance with a light, right? You can stick your head in there if you like. Okay, so we know we need flashlights, a big and a small one, just makes good sense. Okay, we also need an ice pick or a small screwdriver to check for soft or rotted wood. So an ice pick seems like an unlikely tool to have in your toolbox.
And it is.
It is.
What
am I going to do? How am I going to check for soft spots in wood with an ice pick?
It's less intrusive than a screwdriver or something like that.
Because it's a fine point.
Right.
Gotcha.
And again, depending on what kind of a relationship you've built with the homeowner, they may not want you walking around poking holes in their windowsills, but that's a great way to find out if there's any soft wood. You're going to find that most often around the base of a windowsill or places like that. So it's a good way to figure out whether it's rotted, soft wood, if they've had any issues, any major problems with water.
So if you walk up to a windowsill and you look at the windowsill and it looks like kind of funky at the bottom of the sheetrock, you can just
If it looks like it's been repainted in an area.
Yeah.
Those are all telltale signs. Bubbling paint, stains, where it looks like almost a coffee stain type of a thing. Those are all telltale signs of water damage. But sometimes you don't know whether the wood itself under the sheetrock is in good condition or not, and you probably won't know until the house has been inspected by an official inspector. But it's still, it's nice to have. You can use it outside if there's wood issues outside. Maybe a porch post or any place where there's potential water issues.
Okay, so you just poke it into there, and if it feels spongy or something, there's a potential problem. Okay, so the screwdriver made sense to me. The ice pick makes a little more sense to me now. It seemed more like a weapon. Okay, let's move on and get back to tools. So the next tool that we're going to recommend that you have is a step ladder. So if possible, also a 6-foot ladder. So what in the world do I need a ladder for?
Again, we're going to go back to the attic space. If you're the type of hands-on person that wants to poke her head up in that attic, you're going to need a ladder to step on. a 6-foot ladder should do to get you high enough to look in there. Step ladders can be used simply for maybe looking up on top of cabinets to see, what's happening
What's
up there. Yeah.
Sure, that makes sense.
So ladders are kind of most people don't think of them as a tool, but they truly are. I'd be lost without mine. But they're extremely valuable. Everybody
Just at
should
least
have
a
at
step.
least a 3-foot step ladder.
Okay, and that's pretty easy. Most people, even if you have a car as a flipper, you can throw that in the trunk
Slide
quite
it in
easily,
the trunk.
back seat
Yep.
or whatever. I
Yep.
think my car will even hold a 6-foot
Yeah.
ladder if I flop the seat down in the back. Okay, so ladder, important tool for you to have. All right, let's talk about our next tool. So this is a different kind of a tool. So you might not think of this one as a tool, but binoculars.
Right. It's not for bird watching.
It's not, right? This is to view the roof from the ground level. Because some people, like me, are not going to climb up on the roof to check it out.
Right. And I wouldn't recommend that for anybody that's not a professional to be crawling around up on your roof. With a pair of binoculars, you can tell a lot of things with what's going on your roof. If it's a composition roof, a 3-tab roof, which are fairly common, maybe the corners are turning up, or maybe the granules. If you're looking up on the roof and it looks like there's streaks on it, there's probably issues with the granules on your roof.
And that's where the granules have worn off, the streaking?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And that could be from just simple heavy rains. I mean, a typical 3-tab roof is going to last you probably 20, maybe 25 years. But at 15 years, you might see some significant changes in it, depending on where you live and the type of weather and how many trees are around it and that type of thing. The other thing binoculars are good for is if there's a chimney. What's the flashing around the chimney look like? Whether that's a brick chimney or whether it's a metal chimney coming up out of there. They all should be flashed properly, and if you see a piece of flashing kind of hanging off the side, that's a recipe. It's a recipe for water damage in the house. Yeah, you bet.
Okay, interesting. Okay, that's I never thought of that for binoculars.
Well, they're really more of a safety tool than anything else. Keep you off a ladder.
Yes, we all know I want to stay off ladders. Okay. Let's move on to the next one, a thermometer. What the heck am I going to do with a thermometer? Well, I'm going to check the temperature of the hot water for one.
Yep.
See how hot the water coming out of the faucet really is.
Which is actually just another safety tip. A lot of people don't realize how sensitive some people's skin is, and there's a set temperature that water should be coming out of that hot water tank into the house. And so you want to use that thermometer so that you know that it's not scalding.
Right.
There's been all kinds of horror stories and accidents of little kids being scalded because the water was too hot coming out of the spigot and things like that. So it's just good practice just to make sure that it's safe.
And the flip side of that, of course, is if you run the water and run the water and run the water and it doesn't ever get really hot,
then you have
that's a
bigger
problem
problems
too.
in temperature.
Yes, that's a whole nother problem. But your thermostat, your little thermometer is going to help you to know where you're at for that, if it's acceptable levels. Okay, let's move on. A compass is next on the list to determine how the house sits on the property. Now, I've heard you talk about this before, but tell us why it matters. Why does that even matter?
Yeah, and a lot of these tools, people are probably going to scratch their head and think, well, that just seems ridiculous. But if you're really into your project and you're taking this seriously and treating it like a business, it's very, very important to know exactly how your house, your property is sitting on the lot. Where's that sun coming in?
So it's about the sun.
Right, absolutely. Because that sun is a direct effect on your roof, as we talked about earlier. If your roof line faces the east or the west, those are going to be the areas that get the most direct sun. Those are going to be the areas that are going to fail first.
Okay.
So
there's and your siding, right? Areas that
siding, you bet, and even windows. You don't think about it, but when that sun's beating through a window, if you don't have proper window treatments or that like, it's going to cause your carpet to fade. It might fade your furniture,
Sure.
just things like that. So it's really a good idea to know how the house is situated on the lot, on
And
the
some
property.
people can just look at it and go, oh, this is the south side of the house. But not everyone has that ability.
No, some
Like,
people
I don't
can.
have that ability.
Some people get lost walking out their front door. So
Yeah,
Go
so
figure.
just, yeah, if you need one, guess what? There's actually an app on your phone.
Yep,
Right? If you have a
exactly.
smartphone, you don't have to even go have like a compass that you buy. There's one on your phone.
Right.
Actually, when we travel, sometimes Larry's over there with the little compass to see which direction we're flying. Just
it's fun.
because he's curious
It's
and
fun.
he's wasting time. So a compass. All right, let's move on. This one's a no-brainer, and if you don't have this with you, then I don't even know what you're thinking, but a pen and a clipboard. You have got to have your checklists, your contracts, paper for notes, all of that stuff with you. Now, when you're sitting at somebody's table or you're looking at their property and you're getting ready to make an offer, you need all of these things with you. You need your checklist for your pre-offer inspection, right? You're going to need your worksheet so that you can crunch your numbers for estimating, right?
Right.
You have to have these tools, and we, of course, provide those tools for you in the resource section. So if you're wondering where those are, go to the resource section, and those will be there for you to print out and take with you. And do it every single time, because you think, oh, I'm going to remember, but I promise you won't.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll forget something, and you'll think, man,
Yep.
I should have taken my checklist.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And then once you've made all your notes and all of that, 3-hole punch that thing and throw that sucker in a binder
Yep,
so that you have it all the time.
yep, yep. Don't want to lose those, because these are important. The notes that you jot as you go, important stuff to help you remember.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on. Now, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. It was our tool of the week, your camera or cell phone. My cell phone takes great pictures, but if your cell phone takes good quality photos, you can use your cell phone. If you have a poor quality or you prefer a small digital camera, that's fine too, as long as you have the homeowner's permission. And usually that's not an issue, right? You're there to give them an offer.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So they're usually going to be, yeah, sure, take pictures.
Right.
Take pictures of everything, because you think you're going to remember, but
Right.
You
Exactly. and it jogs your memory. So the cell phone is a very useful tool because it does have your camera on there, because it does have a compass on there. It has a flashlight on there, for goodness sakes.
oh yeah, it does.
know,
Good
so
point.
there's a lot of things that cell phone is going to be used for, that you won't have to worry about getting other things. But yes, it is extremely important to take photos. It helps you remember what you've seen if you walk out to your car to put numbers together, or maybe
yes.
you're going to leave and put the numbers together, whatever the case may be. You can flip through your phone and look at the pictures and go, oh yeah, I forgot about that, and
Yeah.
it jogs your memory. And those are vital. Some people even go as far as printing out these pictures and putting them in their binders as well, because sometimes your offer isn't accepted right away. Sometimes it's
Right.
a week or two down the road, and you want to be able to flip back through there and in that binder and see it, because if you keep all the photos on your phone, you go crazy trying to find them. Trust
Some people
me.
are more digital that way, and that's fine. But that's a great point. You don't always get the job or the project, right, at first time you make an offer.
Nope,
Sometimes
nope.
there's some negotiation back and forth. Sometimes the people aren't ready to give it up at that price
Right.
that you, the investor, need to get it at. Because, right, we can't pay retail.
Right.
Right? We're not paying
Right.
retail on stuff. So it's not uncommon for them to come back later and say, I'm ready to talk, or would you consider X? Well, that was 20 offers ago. Right?
Yeah, right,
How are you going to
right.
remember?
Yep, I've looked at 10 houses since then, so long as
Right.
and each binder needs to be specific to whatever house you've made an offer
the
on.
address.
And once that offer is, I mean, if they decline it and they sell it to somebody else, then you can take that stuff out, throw it away, and you've got reuse the binder for the next
Right.
project. But it's just hang on to
Hang
it.
on, yeah,
Yeah.
because you don't know. 3 months, 6 months, if they still haven't sold and it's still distressed or they're still distressed, it might come back to you afterwards. So, okay. All right, let's move on. Masking tape is our next tool on the list, and this is used to mark areas that you want to address and you want to remember later. This is especially helpful for the punch list.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
This particular tool, the tape, is more apt to come into play after the offer has been accepted.
Sure.
And then you go back through and you do another walkthrough prior to having a professional inspection done, and just mark areas
Just a little
of
piece.
concern. Sure, and that'll cause the inspector to pay more attention to this particular. Maybe that ice pick we talked about earlier found some punky wood. You put a piece of tape on there and let the inspector kind of investigate and see what's going on there. But don't be afraid to use that roll of tape up and mark anything and everything that you have questions about or concerned about or think needs to be addressed.
Needs to be looked at.
Yep.
And then, of course, when you're in the construction phase, if you happen to show up for your daily site visit and your contractor is nowhere to be found, because that happens sometimes, then you can leave little tape marks and then send them a text and say, oh, by the way, I left you some little
And I
tape
suggest
marks.
you use bright red tape.
Or
so
green.
You stick that on there. And say,
Yeah, something that stands out, doesn't
dude,
blend
you need to
in.
come and look at this.
Yeah, there's an issue here. So,
Yeah.
And tape is inexpensive, but it's just a good communication tool, really.
Right. Yep.
Helps you remember things. All right. Let's move on. We actually talked about this in an earlier show, the measuring tape or wheel. Now, Larry showed you a cool wheel and how to use it for measuring outside, those kinds of things. Really important to have that when you're doing your estimating to
Right.
make your offer, right?
Yep. Measuring devices.
Measuring
Whether
devices.
whether it's a standard tape that you pull out and measure a room, or maybe it's a laser tape that you can just point at a wall and it shows you exactly how far it is, or whether it's the measuring wheel. All of these things are vital when coming up with your estimates and your numbers for making the offer, or when the offer's been accepted, going back in and getting tighter numbers for how much flooring you're going to need, how much paint you're going to need, how much roofing you're
Right.
going to need. I mean, the list is extensive. So a tape measure, a tape wheel, a laser measure, those are all very, very
important.
vital tools to make sure you have.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily need all three of them. If you don't mind pulling out a tape, then you're great. If not, then you probably
Get the
want
other one.
to get the other
I
one.
like the idea of the laser one because now I'm fortunate in that I have a partner who does that. I don't have to worry about that. So I don't have to do any of those things. And I get to do the paperwork and the stuff that comes easy to me. But if you are a solo investor and you don't have a partner, if you're a woman and you are uncomfortable with using a tape measure, get comfortable. But get yourself a wheel for sure, and get yourself one of the laser measuring devices. Make it easier for you, especially when you're first fussing with a tape measure. Those things have a mind of their own, right? You're
Right.
trying to get a
Right.
measuring, and
Right.
it's doing its own thing. So just be aware that you need something that's going to work well for you as a new investor, whether that's a laser or the wheel. Definitely
Yep.
the wheel outside. Okay. Let's move on. A moisture meter. So moisture meter is something that you're going to use to check for moisture content in walls, in rooms.
In floors,
In
in
floors.
ceilings.
Okay, so tell us how that works, how the moisture meter works.
Well, there's actually a couple of different kinds. There's a moisture meter that works similar to the ice pick that we talked about earlier, that has a little probe on it, and you stick it against a wall. You don't
Into
have
the
to
wall?
you don't actually have to penetrate the wall,
Okay.
but if you stick it against the wall, it can pull out and tell you what the moisture content of
Okay.
that particular wood is. There's actually other ones that are kind of like a laser device that you can actually just point at, almost like an infrared, that you can just point at a wall and it'll tell you.
If there's moisture in
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
So bathrooms, under sinks, behind hot water heaters,
Right.
anything,
Yeah.
any wet zone.
Right. Now, this isn't a tool that I would necessarily say is something that you got to have, because going back again, if your offer is accepted, you're going to have a period of time when you're going to have a a professional home inspector come in there,
Sure.
and he's going to go through the house, and he's going to give you a fairly extensive report on what he's found. And if he's worth his salt at all, there's water damage somewhere, he's going to find it. He's going to report that to you. You'll get a report on all that stuff from him. But again, you know, some of you, like me, are probably more hands-on, and you want to find this stuff out beforehand, before you make an offer, if at all possible. I think
It's an easy tool to just have in your
I think
toolbox,
it's just a good idea.
Yeah.
It's just not one of those mandatory tape measure ladder type tool.
Right, right. But still a great tool to have, and not
Yeah.
all that expensive, right?
Right.
They're not terribly expensive. So why not just have it? I like tools. Okay. Let's move on to another tool that is really handy, an outlet tester. Now, you may not even know what this is, but this actually goes, you plug it into an outlet, and it tells you if the outlet is working properly. If
Yep.
it's hot or not.
Correct.
Right? And if
Yep.
it's not working, there's a problem.
There's a problem. and it could be a serious problem.
It could be.
It could be a dangerous problem, or it could be just the fact that the outlet just doesn't work any longer. Again, this is going to be an area that your professional home inspector will be checking. But again, the reason we're going through all of this kind of stuff is so that you can make your offer number as sharp as you can possibly get it. You don't want to make somebody an offer on something and then have a home inspector come in and look at this stuff and say, well, you have this issue, this issue, which aren't necessarily a deal breaker, but it's still going to cost you money that you didn't include in your original offer. So as much as you can find out prior to the offer, you're going to be way ahead of the ball game. So that's kind of where this comes in. You're checking outlets, you're checking the electrical system with this tester. And I can't stress that enough, with this tester.
What else would they test it with?
We won't
Those
go there,
screwdrivers are ice
but
picks.
right. So, but you just walk around and you just plug it
just
into the
check
to
out a
the-
few.
right. And the homeowner legally is supposed to tell you of any issues that might cause harm or cause this house to be less valuable than it appears to be. All those things in the state of Florida, it's regulated that they have to tell you those types of things. So if they're having an electrical issue somewhere, chances are you're going to know about it. But still, walk around and just even if it's randomly, just check outlets with it. And when you plug it in and the light comes on it, then you just
know it's
unplug
good.
it. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we'll talk about that,
Easy
of course, more in the inspecting
Yeah.
module where he walks through how to inspect all these things. This is just one of those tools.
Right.
That's going to make that job easier. Okay, well, let's move on. So this one is an odd sounding one, and I had never heard someone else say it, but a golf ball.
Yep. It's my
Right?
favorite tool.
It's his favorite tool. So a golf ball to bounce on tile so you can discover hollow spots under the tile.
Correct. Yep. Yep. Might sound funny, but it works. You just drop that golf ball and let it bounce, and you'll be able to tell whether there's a hollow spot underneath that tile, if the tile's coming loose or it's not held down. Maybe it's being held down by the grout and the grout only. And when that ball hits that tile and it goes dunk,
You know there's a problem.
then
under
you know
there.
there's an issue with your flooring and your tile.
Interesting.
So, yeah, and the homeowners might think you're crazy walking around their floor bouncing a golf ball, but trust me, it's worth the 2 minutes or whatever it takes to do it. Yeah, yeah.
So they might look at you funny, and then you just say, "I'm going golfing after this."
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Just
what
got
I'm
my
done here. I'm
just
gonna go
warming up.
Yeah, but when you hear it, you definitely know the difference.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
Yeah.
there's a loose tile. That'll
Well,
explain what you're doing.
And what that does is it tells you that there's an issue going on there, and eventually, because there's a hollow spot under there, eventually it will crack and break. So that's just an issue that you're going to have to deal with at some point. Whether you bounce that ball and you find several hollow spots around the floor, then you're probably thinking you're going to need to replace that tile flooring. You may have to chip it all up. So there again, we're talking about
That's money.
Yep.
Yeah.
How much are you going to offer for this house, knowing that you have to replace all that tile?
Yeah, and if you're not flipping, but you're buy and hold, right? You're going to keep this as an investment property. Now that's really important.
Right.
That you know these things. Sometimes in a flip, you don't change out the tile, but
Right.
perhaps you
Yep.
should. All right, let's move on. So this one, of course, is not a necessity. This is a tool lover's tool, the infrared camera. So while you don't really need one, it's a nice high-tech tool that you can add later if you want, and it does some cool things. So tell us about your infrared camera.
Right, right. So the most important thing that this infrared camera is going to do for you is, again, it's literally a handheld device that you point at a wall and you'll look at a screen on the back of it, and depending on the color of that screen shows up against that wall will tell you how much heat is coming through that wall. And if it's bright red, there's probably not any insulation in that wall.
Okay.
Okay, and the ceiling's going to be the same thing. Most of your interior walls are gonna show up red, but your exterior walls should always be kind of a light bluish color, maybe with just a little tinge, because you're always going to get air seeping around from the cracks of the windows and things like that.
So expect a little red around. Around your windows.
It's not going to be
doors.
perfect, but if that wall looks like it's glowing red, or your ceiling, or any of that kind of stuff, then you have an insulation issue, and it needs to be addressed.
Now, does that work for the floor as well?
It works for the floor as well. Floors are a little different because you don't have just sheetrock there. You've either got carpet, and then you've got probably 3/4 inch subfloor, and you got carpet pad and all that kind of stuff. So it's a little more difficult for it to come through there. And tile usually is nice and cold anyway, regardless of what's going on. But it's predominantly for your ceilings, for your walls.
Okay.
Crawl spaces,
Okay,
things.
so not a necessary tool, but a cool tool if you like tools.
Depending on your definition of necessary.
Yeah,
I
depending
mean, it
on
could
your
get
definition.
very, very expensive opening up walls or cutting holes into your wall so you can blow insulation in there one way or the other.
Valid point. If you didn't know it was a problem.
Right.
So, okay. All right. And I think this is our final tool on the list today, a drone with a camera. Definitely a bit on the techie side, but is a great tool for your wish list. What in the world do you think you need a drone for?
Because they're cool.
Because they're cool. Other than taking aerial pictures, I guess. That's the point of them, right?
That's exactly it. It kind of goes hand in hand with the compass theory, in that with the drone, you can get up over the top of your property. You can see how your property is laid out on the lot. You can see what the surrounding areas. Literally, people have bought houses and gone to flip them or remodel them and didn't realize that they had a pond not 30 feet behind their house.
How? How do you not know that?
Well, because it's a treed area, and if you don't do your research, it's interesting. You can find out a lot of interesting stuff from an aerial view about your neighbors. About the property itself.
Just don't fly your drone over the neighbors because they might object.
But again, it's one of those luxury tools that few people have, but most people want.
Yeah, because it's just a cool toy.
Yeah.
So there you go. Okay, so there's just some great tools that you can have in your toolbox as a savvy flipper as you move through the different phases of working your flip, right?
Yep.
The tools that you need to move forward and learn what you need to learn, make a good offer.
All of your aspects of due diligence. There are actually a couple of other things, Clara, that I would like to add that we didn't have on our list. Yes.
Are they expensive?
No.
Okay, let's hear them.
No, but they are fairly vital. And
Okay,
one
let's hear them.
is that you really need to make sure that you have a pair of shoes that have a good, solid, hard sole on them, because you're going to be walking around a construction site. What do you find on construction sites?
Nails.
That's right. So you want to make sure that you got good footwear anytime you're visiting your job site. The other thing is that, again, if you're a hands-on person, get yourself a pair of gloves.
Yeah, that makes good sense.
You might show up and decide, you know what, it's a Saturday and this place looks like a garbage heap. I think I'm going to clean it up a little bit. So you need
and then
gloves.
Fire my contractor.
or at least have a stern talking with him.
He should have cleaned up the job site at the end of the day, right? Okay.
But some people are that way. They're more hands-on. They enjoy that kind of stuff. They'll actually take the weekend and they'll go to their property and they will clean it up and sweep it up and do all that kind of stuff. So get yourself a pair of gloves and some
Decent shoes.
good
There you
solid
go.
shoes.
That's just good. Makes good
Yep.
sense.
Yep.
And don't
So-
move a bunch of stuff when you're on the job site.
So there you go.
Okay, so there it is, tools. I hope that you got some good information from this module. Don't forget that there's going to be a checklist of tools in the resource section. So you can go there and find your checklist to take with you so that you are, when you're on the job site, you're not forgetting any of the stuff. And we'll see you in another module.
All right. Bye-bye.